G. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. You're
Good
welcome
afternoon.
to the Man to Man series 2024 for the first quarter. Um, so this is in the new year to those that we haven't spoken with since last year during the International Men's Day edition that we had. Guess what? We've been speaking for the last 3 minutes. I and TJ welcoming all of
Yes.
you.
Yikes.
And I forgot
we
to
were
click
not,
the
we
live
were not
button.
online. Anyway, we were rehearsing. I hope we get to say everything we said the way we said it because we're so excited. So we're going to do like 3, 2, 1, and action.
Oh yeah.
Welcome, everyone. George, I said it's J for George, no longer G for George, because George is
Oh yeah.
jumping. Yeah, George is joyful. George is so many things that Jay can express. And it's good to see you, my brother, George. And happy
Same here,
New Year.
man. Same here. Always glad to see you.
Yeah. On today's episode, you look like Coke, I look like Fanta. Yeah, and so welcome everyone watching from wherever you're watching. Please just go on the chat there and just type where you're watching from so we get to know how far we are reaching. It's good to know that you're in this call, and we appreciate you joining us on the second episode of the Man to Man series. Now, unlike last session, we were 4 guys, and it was really a strong, bony conversation. Yeah, because it's a man thing, and you guys know that really men, like we men, not women, but we men, we hardly have real conversations from the depth of our hearts. We talk a lot, but when it gets to the real stuff, we just go mute on and what we say, I will just chest out like that. But today's conversation is unique, and guess what? Your guess is as good as mine. Today's not going to be totally a bony conversation. There's going to be some flesh in today's conversation because we have a lady on board. There's a woman in the man's room. Woo-hoo!
Hey!
There's a woman in the man's
Awesome.
room.
Yeah.
I think she's going to be the man called Julie today. And she's going to come with a softer side of masculinity that will help us achieve the goal of our conversation. So I'm going to allow George to talk about why we're having the man-to-man conversations before we bring our guests up. So George, over to you.
Thanks, TJ. So it's not just a me conversation. TJ, we had this conversation over time where we had been discussing about the pressures that men face, as a husband, as a brother, as a family man, traditionally, in every way. And we said it's something we need to talk about. These things that we had been told growing up, masculinity. We had to talk about it. And the title of today's series is Masculinity Redefining Traditions and Expectations. What are the things that are expected of us as men? What is the ideal thing? And, I've been out there and I've been associating with, younger men. And I found out that a lot of them are not prepared. They are not prepared for manhood.
True.
A lot of them think they know, but they do not know. And in order to have the great society that we want to, it's right to have
These conversations, yeah.
man with the right kind of mentality. So that's what the man-to-man series is all about. It's a place for us to come and learn, unlearn, and learn, new things, talk, share ideas, and shape, most especially the younger men, into the men that they should be. And then for some of us that we have passed that old age, we
I'm
have
going to say we have passed puberty.
we really passed puberty, so that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
It's what it's all about. So TJ, over to you.
So we're going to bring our guest straight up, because I know many of you are sitting on the edge, wanting to know exactly what this conversation. But before we go on, please just kindly copy the link from the from your address bar there and put it on your status. I'm doing that right now, and tell every man you know, every man you care for, every man you know is struggling. And if anyone tells you they're not struggling, that is just a sign that they're struggling more than you think. Tell any man in your contact that we're live having the Man to Man series, and you want them to jump on board this conversation, pick one or two things to energize us, get us rightly oriented and positioned to not just for the week, but for the journey to living out and fulfilling our manhood, as men. Okay, so please help share this across board. If you have the flyers, you can put it in your status and tell people we are live. Yes, we are live. So we have two interesting guests that will be joining us shortly. Coach D, and I will add Coach, though she isn't officially called a coach, but I asked her, add her, because part of what she'll be doing today will be also helping us the path, and that's what coaches do. So Coach J, if I would call her, Coach Juliet, I will be bringing them up shortly on board. But let me ask those of you watching right now, what has been the traditional expectation that has, that you grew up with when you hear the word man, M-A-N, man? What is the expectation? You can just write it down there at the chat so we could read if we see anyone. What is it when you hear man? What comes to your mind when you hear the word man, or when you hear the statement be a man? What comes to your mind? It'll be interesting to read your thoughts if there's anyone sharing. But it's funny. Yes, I can see JD saying strong. Amazing. On the lighter side, we hear what a man can do, a woman can do better. That was what we heard growing up. So if man is strong, that means the woman is stronger. Paul and Waragon, welcome. Morning, Paul. Morning. Okay, it's afternoon from here, Paul. Morning to you. So when you hear the word or the statement, be a man, what comes to your mind? Thank you again, provider, minimal emotions. Yes, that is a killer, minimal emotions. What comes to your mind? Provider. Oh, thank you, Mechanic. It's good to have you here. What comes to your mind when you hear the word be a man? What has it always meant around? Say, come on, be a man, be a man. What does it mean to you? Strong, minimal emotions. And I'm wondering, why do men have to show minimal emotions? Those conversations we'll be having. Masquerade your feelings. Yes, masquerade your feelings. And if we want to extract that statement, it goes far and wide into why relationships are damaged. Fatherhood, Paul said fatherhood, yes. JD says, take the initiative. Oh, yes. Lead the way. Yes. Lead the way. I mean, want to ask, why do women now go for political positions if men are to lead the way? That's on the lighter side. Anyway, don't talk too much. Head of the house, Michael, thank you for coming in. Thank you, Francis, for joining. When you hear the statement, be a man, what comes to your mind? Please just share on the chat. Men don't cry. Michael, have you ever cried? Have you ever cried? Now, I'm just going to anchor the
Men don't cry.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Men don't cry. That is
yes,
a very popular one. Men don't cry.
George,
your father is beating you. I cried though. I cried.
Funny enough, today, just now a confession. I was in church today, and pastor was just teaching. I was just chesting everything. My pastor has a way of always coming to this man and woman thing, no matter what he's teaching. And then he entered one corner for men. I didn't know when tears dropped down my eyes. I had to bend my head, and do like this, so nobody would see me. Because the man shouldn't cry, right? So we're going to be having all this conversation. Steve says, in a lot of ways, men are defined by what they provide, not what they feel. Wow. So you always hear the term, suck it up and be a man. Yes, suck it up and be a man. And you have sucked many things. You suck many things that are destroying you inside. Yeah, and you be a man who one day will explode with those things and cause harm to all those around you. But like I said, my job here is to drive the conversation, and we'll be bringing quickly up on board Coach Daniel. Let me read his amazing profile. Hold on a bit. Oh, I love Coach Daniel. When I saw him, I said his white hair looks like that's wise men from the East. It's great to have you here. Yes, so Coach Daniel Etta is an ICF certified professional coach and holds an executive MBA from the prestigious Contic School of Business and Technology, Washington, D.C., USA. He is also a senior certified professional of the Society of Human Resource Management, with multi-sector and multifunction professional experience spanning over 2 decades. He is interested in partnering with individuals and organizations to reach the fullest potentials and make a positive impact on the world. This he does through providing tailored guidance, tools, and resources to foster continuous growth, learning, and development with core touch points and areas of interest, which includes coaching, training, and HR consulting service. Ladies and gentlemen, with all the masculine love in your hearts, please help me make welcome to today's call. When I say masculine love, by your definitions, the one that don't cry, so it has to be strong love here. Please help me make welcome Daniel Etta to the conversation.
Welcome, Coach Daniel Etta.
Thank you, George. Thank you, TJ. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to the conversation as well.
That's great.
Yeah, George, can you welcome Coach Jay?
Okay, so now we will welcome the second speaker. The second speaker, her name is Juliet Uzoma. So Juliet she's a breast cancer survivor. She's an ex-Nollywood actress and a motivational speaker who has passionately dedicated her time, energy, and services to breast cancer awareness and educating men and women globally. She's also passionate and vocal about feminine masculinity, encouraging youth, especially young men, to embrace the feminine energy, to understand and appreciate their masculine personalities. Miss Uzoma is a mother of 2 beautiful teenage girls, and it is a delight, it is with great delight and utmost admiration that we welcome her to the Man-to-Man conference, to the Man-to-Man series for 2024. You heard what I said about appreciating their masculine personalities. Welcome, Juliet.
Oh,
so that's why we have her here.
Thank you.
All the men are giving you a masculine welcome.
Welcome, Juliet. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. I think it's kind of intimidating to be in a room filled with men, but that's okay. I can handle it.
Intimidating you? Come on.
It reminds me of, a lady walked into a meeting and was like, "Oh, there are all guys here," and she was quite scared. And I said, "Why don't you look at it the other way?" Ouch! Ouch! What happened? Oh, I'm in Nigeria. I forgot. Yeah.
Suck it up.
And she was quite scared that it was all men here, and I was like, "Why don't you see the other way? That this also shows that you have security. A lot of men will fight for you. So somehow, yeah, somehow the narratives we have around, being men comes from a place of dysfunction. So we always see is just the negative. So Julius, you're in a safe house. There are men who would not just celebrate you, there are men who will also fight for you. Yeah. So welcome again.
Thank you. Thank you. There we go. So it's not just Nigeria, it's also here.
Okay. Give me a minute, I'll be back. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate that.
Nice to have you guys here. So, um, to the audience, um, Coach Daniel resides in Spain. So he's speaking to us from Spain, and Juliet is speaking to us from the US of A, as my Igbo brothers will call it, Obodo Igbo. Right?
Okay.
Did I say it correctly?
No, you did not, George. I've told you if you have to slander it, don't say it. Just speak English.
But how do I learn if I don't try? So how is it pronounced?
It's a good try. It's a good try. It's Obodoyibo.
Yeah, Obodo Igbo.
Yeah.
She's added a little bit of phonette to it. Obodo Igbo. Okay, so while we're waiting for TJ to suck it up and join us back, okay, he sucked it up. That's great. Welcome back, TJ.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
back to you.
Yeah, so we'll just jump into today's conversation and hit it running. So we're just asking before we called you on board that what does it mean to be a man? And I want to direct that to you, Juliet. When we hear that statement, yeah, you're the lady here, so we want to hear from the ladies. When you hear be a man, what does it mean to you?
Well, I thought the whole idea is to follow the guy's lead, right?
I like that. I like that. Being a man is taking the lead, right?
Yeah. So I have to follow Coach Daniel. Let's just see what he says about it. Because he's the man. I'm just, I have to echo what he says.
So Coachetta, she's passed the ball to you.
All right. Well, once again, Gillette, happy to have you here. And
Thank
I
you.
think everyone who's watching or listening in will be interested in getting that different perspective. But just to quickly respond, what is it? What does it mean to be a man? I think, TJ, earlier on, you were getting feedback from the audience, their own perspective, their own understanding. And quite a number of them, I would say, touched on the public perception or the public opinion, brave, strong, you know, protector, provider, and all of those things. So those are the typical expectations when you talk about being a man. And earlier on, I was thinking about this. If we're to go back even historically, when I say historically, even to the primitive era, what was the role of the man in the society? The man would be the one who would step out, go hunt in the wild to provide for the family. The man would be the one who would typically step out as well to get into battle if there was need to, whether it was to acquire new territory or to protect existing territory. So those sort of situations, societal situations, shaped over time what became the typical expectation of the man, right? And I don't think that has changed over time. So in terms of what are the expectations of the man, it's of course to be a provider, to be a protector, but I would add that it doesn't stop at those. So there are many more which define who a man is or what a man should be. But I think those aspects are generally what society focuses on in defining what it is to be a man. I guess as we go along, some of those others would come into the conversation. So over to you, Juliet. What are your own
Yeah,
thoughts?
so I'm going to twist it a little bit now for
Okay,
Juliet.
great, sure.
Yeah, I'm going to twist it. So, um, yeah, he set a good foundation from time immemorial to the definitions that has we stuck with. Now, in our woke reality where we learn new things. There's the push for gender equality, for inclusion, and all that. The definition is somewhat evolving. So I'm now evolving the question now to you, Juliet, with the understanding of the drive of feminism, with the understanding of the need for equality, with the recognized place of the woman in the society. How would you now define being a man in the same terms as Coach Etta did?
Thank you for that
Putting you on the
question.
spot.
Oh, well, that's okay. I can handle it. Well,
Great.
first of all, I think the question is who's telling the story? Who's defining the man? Because before I start, and I really love what Coach Daniel said. So before I start to talk about or to even define what a man is, masculinity, I mean, there are different facets of masculinity. So the question is who's telling the story? Because I can tell the story in my way. I can define masculinity in my way. Coach Daniel can define in his way. But, from over time, there are different phases of it. You talk about the complicit masculinity. And those are the kind of men that they echo in the background. What's the decisions that are being made and not really giving an input to the reality of things. They just echo in the background. You have the hegemonic masculinity, and that's what we call, that's like the social political aspect of it. Those real men, those, more like the aggressive kind of masculinity, and people that consider themselves real men, the man. And then you have the subordinate masculinity that the the society doesn't quite consider them the real man, but they're also men, right? And then you're talking about the I think the marginal, which is pretty much they're on the fence. They're considered not too strong enough to have the voice of a man. So the question now is who's telling the story? So if I have to define a man from a woman's perspective, from what tradition, like what Daniel said over the years, is that strong protector, that guy who's there to protect you, or that's more like a conqueror kind of thing. So there are different definitions to it, but then it goes into different compartments as well. as we define it. So that's my definition. That was my understanding growing up of what a man should be. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, here, let me start with the last thing that came to my mind when you said the conqueror. I was just saying the conqueror, the champion is here. That's playing in my mind. And when you ask the question, who's defining, it's it struck something in me, that most definitions we have not really been conscious, so we've just ran with people's definitions without an understanding. So we don't own the definition ourselves. So we become the construct of people's ideologies, and that has either built strong men or has broken strong men. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. So jumping into the real flow of our conversations today, we what are the traditional expectations of masculinity? Coach Daniel, can I throw this to you?
Sure. I think a lot hasn't changed from what it's been historically. Traditional expectations: the man should protect, the man should provide, the man should lead the way, and and a lot along those lines. The man should be firm, the man should be tough, the man should be brave, and those things haven't exactly changed. And it's okay for some of those expectations, right? And the way I also understand it, Juliet talked earlier on about who's telling the story. So I think at some point you find that people pick and choose what suits, right? And what I mean by that is, typically my understanding is most men are happy to protect, are happy to provide, are happy to lead the way. So it's not just because the society expects of that of us as men, but we're happy to do that for our key stakeholders, our family, our spouse, our children, and those who look up to us. We're happy to do that. And I think those expectations are in order. Where you would find, I think, the challenge coming, every now and then is where that is all that is expected of that human being defined as a man. That's all you're primed or made to do. You're only made to provide, you're only made to protect, you're only made to lead the way, right? And I think, speaking from my point of view, those would be the areas where there's room for more conversation to get an understanding. Is that all that defines us as men, or is there more to what defines us? So I don't know if that addresses what the question is, but
Yeah,
that's from
it,
my
it
point of view
did.
what it is.
It did, and I'm going to extend that question to Julie now, asking what are the masculine gender expectations, because we have just talked about the basic what we think men were designed to do, but I'm now thinking if someone marries a someone like me whose muscles are not so thick, now marries a weightlifter who, or someone who goes boxing for Olympics or something, who now has a more masculine gender figure in a feminine frame. Do we now still put some of this? He must be all this stuff, as part of the definition. So I'm now asking you, Julia, what are the masculine gender expectations?
Masculine gender expectations depends on who's setting the expectations. If we talk about back in the years, our forefathers and all of that, there was an expectation. Was that the reality? But that was their expectation, because as time evolves, there are different expectations of a man, right? Because back in my father's time and his father's time, the expectation was like you all said, men don't cry, suck it up and just keep going. So how has that affected a lot of our men today? Psychologically, it has, because you hold that definition that someone has defined back in the years, that you don't cry. So you find a lot of men not holding into emotions. And bear in mind, there's a difference between, of course, the male and the female, because we're emotionally driven, and the guys are just, what's right in front of you, right?
Can
You
I
just,
interrupt you there? Can I interrupt you there, please?
yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
I love that. I love that. That's going to take us into another whole conversation. But talking about that, somebody on the chat earlier said, sorry, hold on. Somebody on the chat said, I cried a lot. So that's Michael. Yes, Michael said I cried a lot, and you're talking about um, the female emotions and the male emotions. While you answer this question, I want you to just put that in mind that we're going to come to talk about emotions,
Mhm.
and why if it's out of place for men to sometimes just express themselves like a woman. So I would say something about this later, but I just wanted to bring it here and underline that thing you said because we're going to come
Mhm.
back to that.
Yeah.
So please continue.
Okay. Well, so basically, men are expected to be assertive, competitive, um, be materialistically successful, so to say. So they have it embedded in their mind that this is what I'm supposed to do. And so a lot of times you see that the when it comes to frustrations, it's very high in men, because if you have to equate it to those expectations, some people think that they're failures. Because I am not able to meet those expectations, I'm a failure. And I cannot cry either. So I'm a failure. So again, when you talk about expectations, it depends on the generation and who is setting those expectations.
I mean, so Daniel, Coach Zeta, who is really setting his expectations? Who really setting his
I think
expectations?
so. I think the expectations come from all over, right? So the society
Mhm.
sets its own expectations. Your family has the expectations. Your friends have the expectations, and it's
Political
it,
backgrounds also do
exactly,
that
so
too.
there are lots of you know views and expectations from all over, and it's not unusual, but I think what it's important is to own your space, right? So
Yes.
like she said, men expect to be materially successful. There's absolutely nothing with that, in my view, with that expectation now. But I think maybe where the difference comes in is that you own that expectation, right? And therefore you define for yourself, what does it mean to be successful, right? At what point, if you're defining success, right, based on, for instance, if I'm defining my success based on whatever judge has achieved, then that's where my expectation lies. If I'm defining based on my own terms, then perhaps I see success from the point of view of today I'm better off than where I was yesterday. And with that mindset, it doesn't bring as much pressure as it would typically bring if I was defining or setting my expectations based on judges' terms. So, summary to this is the expectations come from all, literally everywhere, right? From work, from family, from friends, from spouse, from the society. But it's important that each person first has a self understanding and therefore own his or her own expectation and live by those terms.
Can I add to that?
Sure,
Oh
please.
yes,
So, and
yes,
I
please.
love the fact you said it comes from everywhere. But I think, first and foremost, expectations that are put on men, they originate from the home, from their families. Whatever it is, your father, your mother, what you're expected to do. And I think in so many ways, when we impose these expectations from these individuals, um, I don't think they really take into account the psychological effect of, these expectations that we're
Sure.
putting on them. So a lot of times I usually put it in the home. It starts from home before the society even gets to you.
I agree a lot with you, Juliet, because I'm just thinking how the boy is expected to follow daddy and do probably some very masculine task, as it were, and then the woman should be in the kitchen with mommy, or the girl should be in the
I
kitchen with mommy.
I I was just going to say that.
Yes,
Well,
and so I'm going to ask you. So, George, I was going to ask you, where did, because that Coach D was using you as part of the pointers in his response. I'm going to ask you, where did your own expectation come from?
I don't know. He was just using me as an example. That's it. No expectations whatsoever. But
So, growing up,
we go way back. I and Coach Daniel, like I said earlier, we went to secondary school together, went to university together, we were in the same department together. You know,
okay.
and we've been
No wonder he knows
friends.
your, no wonder he knows your expectation.
So TJ, just to add, right? Sorry, Juliet. I think a lot of those expectations are well intended. So, for instance, Juliet made a strong point about those expectations starting out from the family. So, if you think about your parents wanting you to be successful, the intention is well and good, right?
oh yeah. Hmm.
Or your spouse wanting you to be successful, or even your children, whoever it is. Most times, it could be well intended, and I personally do not have a problem with those expectations, which is why I said earlier on, what I think is important is for each person to own his
Oh,
or
yeah.
own space,
Hmm.
and
Yeah, but
take a stand on. Yeah, Judge, sorry, go ahead.
how does a 10-year-old own that space?
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's putting in mind. Sorry, before you respond, putting in
yeah,
mind that those are the early stages of programming where
yeah,
values, yes, are being,
Those
you know,
those are the formative years.
formative
It
years. Yeah,
is
that's
yeah,
it is in those times that these ideas are being instilled, and they are further um, firmed up by the time we become teenagers. And by that time, we are pretty much formed. Every other thing, the foundation has already been built. Every other thing is just added upon as we grow in the years. So how during that age do we take ownership, or do you understand?
yeah. Sure. I think that's part of the essence of this sort of conversation, right? So that as men and women now who are listening into this conversation and being a part of it get some of these pointers and understanding, we go back home and reflect some of these lessons on our children, right? So obviously, the 10-year-old, the young boy or girl, would be led by whatever the parents say. So it means, therefore, that as we go back home, Judge, you're able to look at your sons and say to them, yes, I expect this of you because I would like for you to be successful, but I also need you to understand that as a young man growing up, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be uncertain and not necessarily have all the answers all the time. So
Yeah,
if we have
Coach
those
Daniel.
conversations with, yes,
Sorry to cut in. Um,
yeah,
we've mentioned this issue about crying.
yes,
Growing up, I never for once saw my father cry.
mm,
Okay, once. I only saw him once. And that once was, I can remember it clearly. It was Christmas Eve, and we had just gotten news that his niece, I mean, his niece, my cousin, vibrant, intelligent, everybody loved her, had just died in a boat mishap on the way to the village to spend Christmas. with her parents. That's his junior brother. That was the first and only time I saw my father cry.
Yeah.
So growing up, I had seen my father, it was everything. He was, what's the word that Steve used? Sucking it up. We could not tell what he was going through, what he was feeling. All we just saw was that masculine man that was chesting everything.
Mm.
So, I mean, I,
Yeah.
I saw that growing up. Of course, that would shape my life to think, okay, part of it is that I can't cry as a man. I can't
Sure.
show any form of emotions as a man.
You're absolutely right, George. And like I said earlier on, I think situations like that or scenarios like that are part of the reason why these conversations are important. So you experienced that as a young boy growing up, but today you're asking some of those questions so that we can reshape the way our own children grow up, right?
Yeah,
And
because
so a
I
man
want.
is
Guess what? I want to cry. I want to cry.
okay. Okay, so a man, earlier on we talked about part of the expectations of being a man. And some of those are to be tough, to be courageous, to be strong. But I want to say something here. It takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of strength to be vulnerable, to show your emotions, to
Yeah.
admit that you're weak. So, whereas in the past, the conversation has been shaped by courage simply means don't show weakness, or strength means don't cry openly and things like that. But I think we've come to the understanding that courage means a lot more than that, and strength means a lot more than that. It takes a courageous person to show the weakness. It takes a strong person to show that weakness, to be vulnerable, to walk up to someone in a safe space to say, I'm struggling. I need help. I'm weak. I can't do this. I need support. It takes a lot of courage to do that. And because from a societal point of view, we've not necessarily normalized that. So you find that it's more and more difficult for men to be able to step in and have those kind of conversations. Earlier on, Juliet talked about the psychological effect, the mental effect. The statistics show that about 70 to 75% of the suicides in the world are by men. And these are some of the reasons because we have been conditioned not to show our soft side, our weak side, our needy side. But we all have those sides. Okay, which is why, earlier on I said it's okay to define some of those things as the man should provide, the man should protect. We're happy, most men, or perhaps I should just speak for myself so that I don't generalize. I'm happy to protect and provide and do all of those things for my family. Not because the society expects it of me, but because there's value in doing those things for my family. But I'm also happy to be able to go to my spouse and say, I don't have the answers. I need help. And that's the essence of the safe space that needs to be created, right? For men to be able to express themselves. I think I'll just let Juliet chip in. It seems she has something to
I
add to
was
this.
going to, I want to
Yeah.
give Juliet a whole lot. I want to give her a whole lot to say on this. But I just wanted to tell you guys. I was just looking at George and listening to you because I cried though. I cried growing up. Oh, I don't know what you guys are saying. Whenever they flog me, I will cry.
Yeah.
And then in school, they used to call me woman rapper because all the girls in class come around me and tell me sorry. Well, I enjoyed it anyway, but I cried. Crying was part of my growing up. And then I think it was also easy for me because the setup of my family, my siblings. I had two elder brothers that were like 5 years away, and then I grew up with three sisters. So I grew up playing with girls and all that. I think it helped my emotions. Uh, yeah, it helped me learn how to express my emotions because sometimes as children we just copy ourselves. Children when growing we just copy ourselves. The closest person to copy was my elder sister, and then I did all those play they did, and it has never made me feel less of expressing myself, even when I fought with the fact that environment, society was trying to label me wrongly because I was very expressive of how I felt. When I share how I felt, people are like, "Man, this guy too they talk. Guy, I'm dying. Can't I speak out?" So that was it for me growing up. So maybe I'll be saying like Juliet said in the home, we should learn to grow healthy space for the children to thrive emotionally as well, and that could help the guys express themselves. But so, Juliet, while you say all you have to say, I want you to add this: where do the feeling of shame come from when men express their emotions with other men in the family? Like I just said, where does it really come from?
Okay, so let me start by just kind of breaking it down a little bit. Can you hear me? Can
Loud
you hear
and
me?
Sure.
clear.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So when we talk about family, one of the things that I like to focus on is I think parents, such as you and I, the ones before us, and all that, we should, in raising our children, we should live our truth. Live in your truth. Because the kids, they mimic whatever it is that they
Exactly.
see. Our children mimic, consciously or unconsciously, they mimic our character, our behavior, regardless of what you teach them. And I think some parents or some adults or men have mastered the art of living in denial, setting expectations for your children that you're not even living. You're telling them what the society expects of them, but you're not living that truth yourself. So as a result, it kind of confuses these children because, you know, I was once a child. I have kids of my own. We don't all know it. As adults, we don't have we don't have the answers to everything, but you have to learn to live in your truth and be authentic in what you do.
Mm.
Because when we set these expectations, and like I earlier said, this has some psychological development in the children. Because you can raise your child in such a way that they feel like nothing else matters. They can conquer the world, and they care very little of the next person. It's all about me, 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 being um, selfish, and just all they want is what they're gonna get from you. You can raise a child to be that
Mm.
way. Or rather, if you see that your child has those traits, it's hard for you to man up and change the narrative and say, hey, this is not okay. You cannot exist in the society like this. So it's either, like I always say, my famous word, we have to learn to be truthful to our children, even to ourselves. We have to be, like I said, living our own truth. That way, you know how to
Mm.
correct a child when they're staring the wrong way. Because if we leave them, or based on how we raise them, and they go out without proper, I want to say, upbringing, they go out thinking that the world belongs to them. And then when the society actually teaches them the harsh reality of life, then there goes frustration, there goes depression, there goes, all kinds of struggles that they have to go through in life. And that's not the right thing. That's not the proper way. Like I said earlier, we don't all have the answers, but you have to live in your own truth in order to be able to
Mm.
help your child or your son. Because in today's world, I mean, look at what's going on in today's world. The generation today is all about me. me, me, me. Nothing else but just me. And you have to be able to tell them the truth.
Sorry,
We have
which generation is that?
the Gen Z. Does that
Oh, the
make
Gen Z.
sense? Well, not. You see, the funny thing is that we it's easy to point fingers and call Gen Z, right? But even the generation before have the same issues. So if you don't have the right guidance, that's just the right word to use. If you don't have the right guidance, how do you raise somebody else when you don't even know what the truth is? You get what I
Yeah,
mean? So
true. Yeah.
a lot of our boys today, we have to learn to be honest, and also because they're watching us consciously or unconsciously, they're watching. Because like George said, I only saw my father cry once. And TJ is saying, "Oh, I cried when they flogged me or they hit me. I cried anything emotional." I think in order for you to really authentically teach a child how to be masculine, you have to let them understand what the true nature of life is, and literally advise them that it's okay to fall, because when you fall, you know not to fall there again, and be able to stand up, dust up, and keep going, because that's what life is about. Because
Yeah.
life is about not just giving up, just keep trying, and one day you get it. But being honest to that child, because a lot of times we raise our children, we have a lot of kids that grow up in a society where there is a lot of insecurities. And you and I know that when a man is insecure, it's a whole different story entirely. Because, first of all, when you're insecure, every little thing triggers fear,
Yeah.
every little thing
Yep.
triggers um, anger, so to say. and and you if we as parents don't catch that on time, and let this boy grow into a man and have his own family, all he's going to do is try if he's married to a woman that is positive and is a go-getter, all they're going to do is pull you down to their level, because that's where they are, and they can't go further than that. So there's a lot of compartments to, you know, masculinity and being a man. But for me, what was the question you asked again, TJ? You said put what in mind?
Yeah, I was asking basically, where the feelings of shame come from.
The feeling of shame comes, if you, in my own definition, everybody has their own definition. But for a man, a feeling of shame comes when you feel like you can't meet up to expectation. You can't meet up to that expectation, that, or you've lived in denial all your life. And then
So,
at some point you hit that honesty, then
so if I may ask, is it right to feel shame when you do not meet up with certain expectations as a man?
the question is, what expectations are you
Yeah. Because you have said
meeting
that
up?
over, Juliet. You said that over and over.
Yeah.
It's been, yes. And I'm just thinking, why really should we be ashamed? Because from the first thing you said when answering, you basically pointed to the fact that you need to own your truth. Then the question would be, what is your truth? And then from what you were also saying, part of the response to that is the fact that we need to be vulnerable and sincere with how we feel. And then in
Hmm.
communicating that with our children, while you were talking, I was just seeing how many parents actually confuse their children by telling them to be strong, telling them to play strong while the children see them struggling as well.
Hmm.
So, somewhere in the minds of the children, like daddy isn't or mommy isn't, but mommy is saying, you know, they can't process the whole thing. It's even goes further to confuse them more. You know, my daughter usually comes to me whenever I feel down. Like I say, I express it. So they know it's written in my face that Daddy is not happy. I don't need to yell anything. Sometimes I'll sit with my hands in my head, and my daughter just comes around and she just rubs me back. Daddy, it's okay. Don't cry. It's okay. I'm like, who told you I'm crying? But you know, but seeing her do that a lot, you know, alone was kind of strengthening for me. You know, getting to know that being vulnerable also gives me the opportunity to draw strength from others. You know, so
Yeah, I think it's important for men to understand. Like one of the voiceovers that I did just of recent, in order for you to fully embrace your masculinity, you have to understand, how it feels. You have to be in the shoes of a woman to understand that feminine side so that you can fully embrace your masculinity. Because a lot of times in today's world, when we talk about, let's not talk about boys, let's talk about husbands. You're married, and if you do not understand what it means to be a man, not just being strong and not just providing, because you can provide and still hurt the woman that you so much care for. Does that make sense? So you can give them the world, but you have to understand the woman, because women, like I said, are emotionally driven. Emotionally driven in the sense that you have to understand your partner's love language when you talk, when you're married. So it's okay to tune into that emotions, know when she's not fully there, when she's missing out on something, because you can say, oh, I'm giving her, she's got thousands and millions of dollars in her account, but if she cannot feel you, that makes no sense.
what happens
So,
when
Juliet, can
what
I ask you a question? Can I,
I have many
TJ, can I
questions
ask
for
this
her.
question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Please, let me just ask this one. What happens if a woman is raised by a man? And when I mean a man that is termed
In
like
the
an
old
alpha
old
male.
definition, the old definition,
Yes,
yeah.
like an alpha male.
Hmm.
And she mirrors this man. The traits that she has is that, there are women that we refer to as she men. They are women, but they are not women. They are men in women's clothing.
Well, that's where the man does his job, to kind of soften that side of her, because all she knows is what she's been raised by. I was raised by my mother. I lost my father at the age of 7. So we were raised to be strong. We were raised to be,
Independent.
career driven, independent, career driven. Do you understand? So sometimes that's what you know. But don't forget that regardless of how a woman is raised to be masculine or strong, like you say, she's still a woman, and she still needs to be catered to. And it's not for a man to understand that side of his woman and be able to fill in that gap for her. Because once you do that, trust me, if a man understands that aspect, or understands or embraces the feminine side of himself, things are a little bit more clearer when you're in a relationship, if that makes sense. Things are a little bit more clearer when you are raising a son, because you can then explain and share with him what it means to have that side of him. Like, it's okay. You don't have to mask it all the time. It's okay to speak about it, and it's okay to literally live in your own truth, because we learn from our children. We raise our kids, our parents raise us, and at the end of it's like a circle.
Yeah.
At some point, our parents learn from us because the generation is different, right? So we learn from them, and they in turn learn from us, because they have to see the new generations through our eyes. So when our kids are growing, when our boys are growing up, as much as we set a good expectation, put them in good schools, make sure all, you know, whatever it is, but raise them enough to know that it's okay for you. I need you to be independent, because if you're independent, I can sleep well at night as a parent. If you can take care of yourself, I can sleep well at night. And we have to be able to do that for our children, because if you raise a child and they grow up to be insecure, especially men, this is where aggression comes in, this is where violence comes in, because they feel like, violent towards their partners, because any little thing triggers insecurity. And for those that are just naturally violent because that's how they were raised or that's the society they're in, is going to show off towards their partners. Does that make sense?
A
Yeah.
whole lot of sense. I'm going to go to Coach Etta. There's this conversation may have to go like for 2 hours, but we don't have the time. It's getting more interesting. What Juliet has pointed to us is that each individual has to seek clarity. They have to seek clarity for themselves first, because I think when we have humans or beings, male, female, who are just living without they are not conscious of the fact that we are all like a moving train with a truck of experiences that had, built us into what we are yet to define. What we do is that we carry that and we dump it on the other, and it, causes the chaos in your relationship, but then it now helps you destroy the children you ought to raise rightly without you being conscious about it. So we need to always define and know who is telling the story that we are writing. But coming back to you, Coach.
Let me add something.
Okay.
In raising our children, you raise your kids to a certain extent, then it's also okay to step back and watch the kids, because every child has their own identity. And until you step back to really study, if you have one, two, how many, you can really tell who's who. And that way, it kind of shapes the way you can guide them to grow as an individual, not necessarily instilling what we want of them. You can share with them how you would think, they can grow in the society. And then you can step back and watch them grow. That way you can, you know, properly guide them based on where they're going or what they turn out to be.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you for that. So, Coachetta, yeah. So, talking about men emotions, I was just thinking if you had the kind of man who is always very expressive, a man who's very emotional. So it's two in one here. One is the man is very emotional. He can express himself. Sometimes everybody sees him like a sissy. He's so emotional. You should leave that for the woman. And he's struggling through a lot. So, what does it look like to support a man through a vulnerable experience or moments of weakness?
Okay, what does it look like to support a man through vulnerable situations? So
Yeah.
first, I think the person on the other side, I mean, this could be friend or spouse or whoever it is the man is sharing this, expressing himself to, needs to sincerely have that person's interest at heart, right? And what that would lead to is a session where you're able to create a safe space for the man to express himself. And what does a safe space mean? It means you're not there to judge, right? He's in his low moment. You're not there to knock him down further, to say, well, I told you so, even if you had told him 1,000 times over, not to go to a certain part. You're not there to criticize. You're there to listen, to understand, and to hold his hand to say, look, I understand, this challenge right now. I may not understand fully what you're going through, but I'm here to listen, I'm here to support in ways that I may be able to. Now, if and I don't think it's really just for men, even for the women folk, for anybody to express himself or herself in moments of weakness to a second person, to somebody else, there's a need to have the sense of comfort that this person I'm sharing this pain with has my interest at heart, right?
Exactly.
And especially for us as men who more often than not bottle it up, it becomes even more important to have the conviction and the understanding that if I'm sharing it, whether it's with Juliet or with George or with TJ, they have my interest at heart. They will not take my story or my situation and make it a story out there for others to laugh at. I'm sharing because again, they may not have an answer, to solve my problem, but they would at the very least listen, hold my hand, and give me some sort of assurance that things can be okay, that they will walk this journey with me. And I think it's a very important need that we all have. The difference is women obviously are more expressive of that need than us as men. So, to the question, what does it mean to support a man through that downtime? Truly care, create the safe space, listen, and support.
Yeah, just like the man to man space. It's a safe space where men can really come. Don't worry, guys. Juliet is not in our community, so you can come there and share. She wouldn't read anything you're sharing. It's all men, and we do real men stuff there.
But let
So
me
if you
let me let me let me add to what Coach Daniel is saying.
yeah.
What is it like to create that safe space for a man to come and share their concerns? And so I guess this is more like, is it a question or a statement? But when you have a friend, Coach Daniel, when you have a friend that shares a concern, and you said you listen to them, are you listening to understand where they're coming from so you can correct them where you, because sometimes, like, I'll give an example. If my friends reach out to me on a concern, I let them share their story. I listen to them. And where I feel that there's something a little bit more disturbing in that story that concerns my friend, I can stop to correct you and say, "Oh, you were wrong in doing this part. If this is what you did, I don't think this is right." In the man space or the man cave, do men get the opportunity to tell each other the truth when they come into that space to share their concern, or you just listen to them and say, "I got you. I got you," is it can take different shapes. If you
Um,
if a man has some negative things, or probably has one or two things to share about another friend that he did, and you know very well that it's not right, I think it's always best to nib it right there and share with them what they're doing wrong, or what you hear that doesn't sit well with you, because that's where for the most part, our society is breaking down, because we don't have people who are authentic and real with us.
Mm.
So I guess the question to you, when that man cave, man space is created, do you listen to correct where you hear something wrong, or do you just listen to support?
Okay, so I would say every conversation has to be put in context, right? So I would,
Mhm.
if I had to absolutely pick between correct or support, I would say support. And that support could be different things depending on the situation. If the support to be given in a particular situation means correcting this person based on what you've heard, and him being open to feedback about going forward, then of course that correction becomes the support you can give. If the support required is a situation where, look, I've done the right things, right? But it still just didn't work out. Then maybe all this person needs at that point in time is just a listening ear, right? The safe space for me to vent or release the tension and the emotions and the tears that are within me. In that context, then of course, what comes to mind immediately is just be there, right? So again, it has to be situational. But the bottom line is that you're there to support, you have the person's interest at heart. And that doesn't mean that you will
You're
then shy
permissive.
away from having the difficult conversations if that
Yeah.
is what is required. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Chieme
So,
Ukuzu is saying, for as much as you bring the man child up, there are certain aspects of life that a woman cannot share with a man, the way a man will share, and it works both ways. Most men have a way of communicating and they reach out to each other. What are your thoughts on this?
Can you recap that? I'm not sure I understand
Yeah.
what he's communicating.
Okay, I'm going to read them separately. The first said, for as much as you bring the man child up, there are certain aspects of a man. So I think the person basically is saying there are things that a man can't share with a woman and that a woman can't share with a man while bringing the child up. Said it works both ways. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll let Coach
I think,
Daniel address
okay, sorry.
first. No, I'll let you
Okay, so
address first. That's what I'm saying.
okay, thank you. So again, it goes back to some of the things we've said earlier. I think Juliet captured it as live your truth. I said own your, expectations and things like that. So I think each person needs to determine, right? If you and Chino have a male child and a female child, based on your situation, what are you comfortable sharing with your with your daughter? What are you comfortable sharing with your son? And likewise with your wife, what is she comfortable sharing with your
Coach
daughter?
Daniel,
Yeah.
Coach Daniel, while you're asking the question, I'm thinking today's society doesn't need your permission to share the things you're not sharing. So
So again, it's not about the society at this point. We're saying you, because you are the immediate society of that child, right? Your family is the first society. So do you want what do you consider of value to your children in terms of shared experience, whether it's your son or your daughter? What do you consider of value to share? What do you consider that you can only share with a son, and what do you also think should not be shared with your daughter, right? Now, each person needs to define that so that you understand what you're trying to achieve, not just in the short term, but also in the long term. Of course, there are certain conversations which are perhaps more suited for mother and daughter, right? As much as we may understand certain things from books or literature about periodic cycle, I think the mother, is best placed to have such conversations with the daughters. But again, I think you also need to ask yourself the question, if for some reason the mother was not in the picture and it was just the father, who would then have those conversations? Or the mother wasn't in the picture, or the father rather wasn't in the picture and it was just the mother, who would have those manly conversation or masculine
like
conversations?
Julie can answer that because I think
Exactly, because
she had that
she
experience.
mentioned the father figure wasn't around from age 7 for her. So, but the mother still brought them up to be independent, to be career driven, and things like that. So, yeah, Juliet, please go ahead.
Oh, sure. I like the fact that you said when a woman has her monthly, her mother, and then if the mother is not in the picture. I mean, in today's world, there have been a lot of great fathers who have done a great job. And probably,
thank
I
you,
think
thank you.
reaching out to, in reaching out to, I think sometimes most of these fathers reach out to maybe females in their lives or sisters or a female, a good friend or whatever, to kind of ask
Mm,
those questions to help the daughter grow up. For me, growing up with just my mother and raising were 6 children that she had to raise all by herself. My mother, one of the great things that, so much, I love that woman. One of the things she did was literally raise my brothers to understand what it means to be a woman. Do you understand? And that is by through cooking a lot. My mom loves to communicate. If you reach out to her, she loves to communicate because she loved reading. And
I was going to ask that question.
she literally educated herself a lot through books and all that. And she raised us in such a way that it's not easy raising 6 children in Nigeria. Boys and girls, it's not. The girls were kind of easy because we came first, so it was easy to hand the tools to us. And then when it came to the boys, it was like, oh my God, it was a little challenging, but she did the best she could. And with the help of, I believe, the male figures that we had around us, was a little bit helpful. But at the most part, it was her advice, about life to us, that no matter where we went, whatever we did, you still hear that voice in your head. As much as, as teenagers, you don't want to agree with whatever your mom says or your parents say because it's flying over your head. But trust me, as we got older, you were seeing the reality of the things that she told you. You thought were old school.
Yeah.
And like, oh my God, I remember this. She said this. So, I mean, I think in where we come from, and I would want to say globally, it's always safe to say, as much as the family raises the children, the community also raises the children. The people that have great interest at heart for that family would,
Definitely.
those are the people you align your children with.
Sure.
Yeah. So, with regards to what Julia mentioned on how her mom brought up her brothers, I would say it's the same thing my mom did for us. There was no difference between the male and the female in my house. The men went to markets. They were taught how to price stuff. I mean,
Like
I used to
I'm
think I
better
could.
than my wife. Thanks to my mom.
Yeah,
It'll
we were
be
taught
nice to
how to
get her
cook.
opinion on that.
Yeah, my brothers, everybody knows how to cook, domesticated. Now, in light of that, are those kind of men seen to be weak? You see men going to the market, pricing fish, getting food stuff, coming home and cooking. I have been in some places where those kind of men are termed to be weak.
Now, let me correct you on that. Again, when you ask questions, there are different compartments to every question you ask. So I guess the first question is, why is the man, if is a married man, right? I want to assume, why is he going to the market? Is number one question.
Should I answer that question?
Are you no wait, are you doing it because you don't feel your wife is capable? Not to say that
Okay.
women are smarter or better, but I'm just asking, why are you doing that? Is that an agreement between the both of you, or is that situational? There are different situations to things. So as much as you can raise a child to learn how to cook or whatever the situation is. Everybody's an individual, and people can grow up to change over time. So, but I think setting the right standards for a child, and someone like the question you posed, someone said you can't teach, a woman cannot teach a son what the father can, right? Is that the question that was
Yeah,
that
yeah,
went
yeah.
out
The
there?
person, the person went for that. Even ask. So, what questions? Sorry. Say so. Question: how much can a woman tell a man how to be a man without hearing it from a man?
How to be a man is, being attentive. Listen, when someone is sharing, because a lot of times, men do have selective hearing, right? They just, sorry, I'm not trying to generalize it, but it's the truth. They hear what they want to hear, pick out what they want to pick out, and that becomes the what you just said. And then at the end of the day, the woman, I mean, I'm sure you guys will agree with me. At the end of the day, when you do that thing and the woman said, no, but that's not really what I said this and this, you're like, oh, I thought I heard this. So you hear what you want to hear, but are you attentively listening to the person? Because a woman can teach a man how to attentively. And also, for me, I'll use my mother as an example. My mom would always tell my brothers, do to your wife what you want to be done to your sister. So that did ring a bell to my brothers because they were very protective. Even though they were younger, they were overly protective of their sisters. And so a lot of times, we communicated. That's the one thing that we did a lot. And that's the one thing that I think is really missing in a lot of our generations, communication. We communicated back and forth. When they had struggles about things, they would, call to say, what would you do in a situation like this? And because in today's world and also in the masculine world, the masculinity world, men don't, the communication thing, I think in so many ways, I'm not trying to be biased, but in so many ways missing, because communication is key to anything at all. Communication, clearly communicating.
Yeah, and Coach D, Chemis here, this person has been very engaging on the chats, and thank you, Cheme Kuzu, for that. He says most men have a way of communicating and they reach out to each other, just against what Juliet was saying. How true is that statement?
Most men have a way of communicating. I don't know about most men, but I think so. For instance, I have some very good friends that, if I need to put it out there, my emotions there, it's just a phone call away. I mean, or if
Mhm.
we're in the same location, then yes, we get together and have these conversations. So it's at the end of the day, it's important for each person, whatever the issue, whether it's the expectations or the communication, whatever it is, decide for yourself what would be the driving reasons for your decisions or for the choices you make. Are you going to make the decisions on how you communicate or how you show up as a man based on what the society dictates, or based on what, as an adult, knowledgeable, whole, resourceful, you've decided this is what works for me, and this is the line, the direction I'm going to toe. So, earlier on, Juliet was trying to address the issues about going to the market and shopping and all of that. What if it's the man who really just loves to shop all the time, right?
Exactly, exactly.
It
And that's
doesn't make
that's
him,
why that's why I
That
said, is it
that
an
is.
agreement? Is it
yeah,
an agreement? Because if that works,
exactly.
then that's great.
Absolutely. So if he loves to do that, it doesn't make him, in my opinion, any less of a man.
Any
Oh
less,
CJ,
no.
you
yes.
love to
Oh
cook.
no.
If
Oh,
you choose
yes.
to cook for the home every day of the week, in my opinion, it doesn't make you any less of a
Let me
man.
let, let let me
So,
let me let me clear
So
that when a
yeah,
man
sorry,
does his
let me
shopping.
take this opportunity to invite
yeah,
all of you
yeah.
when you're all around to my world famous seafood afang. You know,
Okay.
invite you guys out
Thank
to
you.
lunch.
Thank you. But let me make it clear. When a guy loves to shop and a guy loves to cook, that's kudos to a woman. Trust me, we don't frown against it because it's actually very attractive. Because then, you're in tune. So let me just put it out there so you
Mm.
know.
Thank you, Juliet. So just to sort of wrap that up, whatever you choose, whatever works for you, and in this context, when I say you, obviously referring to you as a husband if you're married, you as a family man if you have a family. I mean, if you're single and you choose a different path. I mean, it's you and you alone. But if you're in a family context, whatever works for you as a family unit, by all means. If it turns out that your spouse happens not to like you to accompany her for shopping for whatever reason, then of course, if that is a convenient relationship, you stay out of the shopping with her, stay out of the kitchen as well, and let her do her thing. If she loves you to accompany her and you're able to work it out, then by all means, bottom line is those acts or of service or non-acts of service do not necessarily define who a man is. There are
It
lots of
doesn't
things.
define, it doesn't
Yeah,
define, but it does add
yeah.
spice to it. And
Oh,
trust me, for
definitely. I
those that
mean,
are married or in relationship, please try to surprise your woman with a nice good meal. It's very the
It
spice to
adds
the
spice. It adds
relationship. I'm
spice.
sorry, Dr. Coach Daniel, please continue, but
It adds
it's good to
spice
put it out
inside
there.
and adds pepper outside. So it
I'm
peppers
sure
them
it
outside.
does. I'm sure it does. TJ loves to cook, so he's echoing your views, Juliet. So I think bottom line here is there's a need to change the narrative, right? So we understand how the society defines what it is to be a man. So own that narrative, make it yours as to what works for you. So being a man, it's not just about being strong or courageous or providing or being a provider and all of those, you know, lovely adjectives, the tough adjectives. It also includes showing and owning some of those softer adjectives as well. I mean, I
Showing and
think
feeling.
God has made all of us and provided those emotions in each and every one of us. So I don't think manliness or masculinity is defined by only picking and choosing those that define us as tough, strong, and all of those things. Just my view. But at the end of the day, each person define and own your space.
Hmm. And
Thank you.
I like the fact that you said that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So we are really short our time for today. And I'm
Wow.
thinking we should have
Okay.
a part two where we can also focus a lot more on the man in relationships because I love where this is going. Uh, but I want to say big thank you and ask everyone here to please watch this again. If I ask what you have learned from me, what I have learned is that I have to listen to Julie and Coach Etta again. So I'm going to watch this, put it on a replay, so I can pick their interesting thoughts and add to my learnings. The conversation has been overstretched, but it was rich and has a lot of value. So please, I'm reiterating this and show you watch a replay of this. Thanks to all those who have joined us so far and stayed till this time. The man-to-man, the man-to-man community exists. You can come and can have these conversations on the go in that community. And please feel free to get men in your circle around. Talking about communicating. This is a space where we can have healthy communications. Sometimes as men, when we just go and we hang out, we just use that as more as a coping mechanism, not necessarily dealing with the issue itself. Because the truth is, we don't really talk the talk. But thanks, everyone for
Yes.
being here.
Support mechanism.
Yes, but yeah, we need more of a support than just coping mechanism.
Well, it's
Yeah.
also important that, men do explore all those facets of masculinity to help them identify, their ways of interacting with others and who they really are, because it's very important.
There's a comment I need to read here. They say some of us
Okay.
love to cook for our women. Please allow us. I remember when my mom was pregnant with my younger brother. She fell so ill, and my dad basically cooked for us through that period. So allow us. Thank you so much.
Okay. TJ, I suspect that my comments about cooking are being misconstrued as saying it's not part of the makeup of being a man. No, absolutely not. In case that's how it's being interpreted. I'm saying if you do that, it doesn't make you less of a man,
Yeah.
right? So if it's a comfortable situation for you and your partner, by all means do that. likewise the shopping and all. So just in case. But it's been a pleasure, exploring this topic with all of you. Thank you again for having me here, TJ and George. Juliet, thanks for being on the stage with me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
George, over to you.
Yeah, so thank you all. Thank you, Juliet. Thank you, Coach Daniel. Thank you, TJ. Thank you to everyone that was able to connect and be a part of this. This discussion is inexhaustive. So I'm looking forward to the next edition, to the next series of the Man, which will be coming up in the next quarter. So we have this series on a quarterly basis. So we have the next one in the next quarter. The information will be passed out to everyone through a community and those that will reach out to. So once again,
thank you,
Juliet, Coach Daniel. Thank you so much. I love you both. TJ, much love to you, bro. So thank you.
Bye, all. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
And